This is meteorologist Steve Nelson with your weekly weather briefing for May 22nd. Before I get into the forecast and outlook for the week, I wanted to show you something that's just come across the wires. NOAA has just released their 2014 Atlantic Basin Hurricane Outlook. This is a seasonal forecast for what they expect for the rest of the hurricane season, which starts in May and lasts really until October, November. The average is, there's two sets of numbers for named storms, hurricanes, and major hurricanes. And they have two numbers beside each of those categories, and the one on the right is the average. This is the average over many years of what we expect normally. In any given season, on average, there's 13 named storms in the Atlantic, 6 hurricanes, and 2 major hurricanes. And the forecast is actually to the left of that number. We're looking for significantly below normal activity for the season, with 8 named storms, 3 hurricanes, and 1 major hurricane. There's some probabilities on the right there. You can kind of see that there's a spread. Obviously, we're not 100% confident on these kind of forecasts. It's for a season. But that's the main thing you want to get out of this message, that below normal conditions are expected for the 2014 Atlantic hurricane season. Okay, so here's a little bit more information on the outlook. This slide was prepared just recently, but before today's official NOAA forecast was released. So what we're looking at now is a forecast from Colorado State and from the Weather Channel as well on the outlook. And you can actually see that they're also, both of these other entities are calling for below normal seasons as well. The reason why NOAA and the other expert sources of these forecasts are calling for a below normal season is El Nino. El Nino is supposed to be developing this season. It's already starting to develop. There's signs of this in the Pacific Ocean already. We're forecasting a moderate El Nino to develop. And I'll have some more historical context here in a minute on that. But what that does is increase the wind shear across the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico and the tropics in particular. It makes it a lot more difficult for storms to form in general. And the instability, the amount of heat in the ocean and in the air above that, can also be disrupted by El Nino conditions. Here's a slide that goes into a little more detail about historically what's happened during El Nino and La Nina cycles. Right now, I don't have this on the screen here, but the forecast for this season's El Nino is to have a value amount maybe around 1.5 or maybe a little higher, closer to 2.0. And looking at the numbers here on the screen, you don't need to worry about what that means exactly. I'm sure you can research this on your own if you need to, but the ONI is basically an index that categorizes the El Nino or La Nina conditions based on the sea surface temperatures in the Pacific. The last time we had values like this was recently 2009, had a value of 1.6, and back in 97, if you remember, some very severe conditions in the southern states, Southern California, all the way to the Gulf Coast states, and into Florida, there was very active weather with that very strong El Nino. That was the last strong El Nino that occurred. It's been some time, was 1997. So historically, what does that mean? Is specific for the tropics is when you start looking at the past El Nino seasons, and we want to thank Dan Darby, our tropical program leader here at the office, for putting together these slides. We've highlighted 2 of the top more recent El Nino seasons here because they do relate to what we're expecting this season. In 2009, we had a similar El Nino in strength. The strength was pretty strong, the kind that we're kind of expecting this season. We did have only 9 named storms in the Atlantic, 3 hurricanes, and 2 major, and it was certainly a below-average season, and we did not have much impact in Georgia that particular year. However, in 2004, it kind of points out that it's not quite so simple. The El Nino was just getting started, so it was more of a neutral to pattern at the time, developing into an El Nino later on in the winter than 2004. The strength of the El Nino was a little weaker than what is expected for this season. But look at the forecast. We actually had somewhat of an above-normal season with 15 named storms, 9 hurricanes, and 6 major hurricanes. And in particular, 2004, for those in Georgia at that time, remember, it was quite active. We had Major Hurricane Francis, Major Hurricane Ivan, Major Hurricane Jean all make landfall and track across Georgia. Tropical Storm Bonnie also formed earlier that year. It was a very active, very wet season in Georgia in spite of a weak El Nino developing. So it's certainly not a one-to-one correspondence between El Nino and tropical activity. There's just that general trend that on average it should be, but you can always have exceptions. All right, so getting back to the forecast and what we're expecting the next 7 days, actually even late this afternoon and evening today, which is Thursday, we do have that very slight chance of thunderstorms, and because of the pattern we're in, very warm temperatures, a fair amount of instability, very steep lapse rate, or what we're calling, with the cool air aloft. and decent wind shear, vertical wind shear. Those combinations could produce severe weather. If we get any storm to form, which may be the problem, they could produce damaging winds, large hail up to 2 inches in diameter, quite a bit of lightning in an isolated area. This is being recorded as of 2:30 this afternoon, and so far we're not seeing any storms on radar in the vicinity. Not a lot of cloud cover in that part of the state as well in North Georgia, so we're hoping that we won't see any storms this evening or late this afternoon, but we're just worried that those ingredients are in place and we could see that. The Storm Prediction Center is still calling for a slight risk of severe storms in this area, so we'll continue to monitor that. To reiterate what I was just talking about the isolated nature of the storms if they do form late this afternoon and evening, on the screen on the left here is a computer model forecast from a short-range, high-resolution model. This was actually taken from this morning, and later runs are kind of continuing this trend of showing very, very isolated storms, and if they do form, they would be mostly in Tennessee. This is about as bad as this particular computer model is showing for any kind of threat near Georgia. Here's another computer model on the left as well, and it also shows just limited shower activity that's mostly isolated in Tennessee, not too much in Georgia. Like I said, our forecasters here will continue to monitor this, but it looks like any threat that does develop would be pretty isolated. It appears we'll be in a similar pattern on Friday. Isolated storms are again possible. We'll be in northwest flow across north parts of the state into the South Carolina, North Carolina region. The ingredients as far as the amount of instability and hail is somewhat less than today, so maybe we'll get away with just, if we do have storms, just gusty winds and hail up to 1 inch diameter with lightning, but of course things can change. So be aware of that. We'll continue to monitor that and let you know with our forecasts and warnings. And rather than go through a play-by-play on each of the next days over the next 7 days through Wednesday next week, I've got just an outlook here for two cities, one in far north Georgia in Blairsville and the other in Perry in the heart of Georgia. Both are kind of showing the same thing with near or above normal temperatures. But notice that especially after Saturday, our rain chances go back up. It really appears that we'll be in a pattern where we could see isolated thunderstorms in the afternoon and evening hours, similar to a summertime pattern, but a little bit more organized in that. We will have a little bit of wind shear. It is May still. It's not quite summer yet. And the weather charts really show that as well. So take it for what it's worth. Just plan for maybe some afternoon showers and thunderstorms, maybe a little bit better chances as we go into Tuesday and Wednesday. For the most part, most areas will stay dry. So in summary, isolated severe storms are possible late this afternoon and tonight. At this time, it appears most areas will stay dry. We may not see any storms at all. We just want to make people aware of the ingredients that are in place for storms tonight. Isolated afternoon and evening thunderstorms are possible again tomorrow on Friday, and again Sunday through the rest of the week. Maybe nothing ominous or as far as significant severe weather, we're not seeing that, just sort of a general showers and thunderstorms occurring in the afternoon and evening. Slightly above normal temperatures, even in Atlanta area could see temperatures around 90 later next week that is. And finally, as I mentioned at the beginning of this broadcast, the Atlantic Hurricane Outlook was just released by NOAA. It's calling for below normal conditions, below normal amount of hurricanes and tropical activity, so that's good news. But just so you know, even with those kind of conditions, it is possible to see one or two that can make landfall and can be quite significant, as I talked about earlier in 2004. So that's all I have for everyone. I hope you have a great week. We'll talk to you soon.